Hello everyone and welcome to this week's ExtendScript QuickTip tutorial. In this one I'm going to show you how to make an effect randomizer script that will take any effect you give it and then randomize all of the properties, quickly giving you unique looking looks. So I can go ahead and down here select which effect I want to start with. I can randomize my tritone layer, and by running the script, every time I press F5 or run it, it's going to randomize all of the values inside of it. So I can just keep hitting it until I find something that I like. That one was actually really cool. And then I can go in and select the next effect I want to randomize, in this case a brightness and contrast, and start randomizing that as well until I get the effect that I want. So this script is basically just going to go through any of the properties, figure out what kind of value it needs, whether it's one-dimensional, two-dimensional like a position, or three-dimensional like a 3D position, and then it's going to randomize those properties. So this is just of course a quick tip, and the code will be free down in the description below, but I'm going to go over everything in here and explain how it's working and how you can call this function and use it properly. So essentially we have a randomize effect function, and the only thing this takes as an argument is an effect. And this effect basically just needs to be any effect that is in this effect controls window here. So what we can do is grab our active composition, which we have right here, with our effects applied on it. And then of course we need to give it an effect. So we're going to grab our layer here with our tritone effect. And what we'll do is we'll call the randomize effect for layer.effect number 1. You could also call the effect by, its property name, but that can of course vary based on the different languages. So it's easiest just to call it by the index, or if you wanted to, you could loop through all your effects and randomize all of them. So inside the randomize effect function, it's not as simple as just saying grab the highlights and randomize it, and then grab the brightness and randomize it, because each of these values has different property value types. Inside of the scripting guide, if you type in property value type, we can go ahead and look at the whole list of them here. We have no value, 3D spatial, 3D, 2D spatial, 1D color, custom, and etc. These will each give you an example of something in After Effects that uses this type of value, and some of these are actually not really modifiable, so there are cases in which you might run into issues with this script. If an effect uses something like a custom value, think of curves, how you have custom little points to move around, and there's other values that can cause problems. So what we need to do first is identify what kind of value it is, whether it's a 2D or a 3D, and based on that we'll use a switch statement to manage each of those cases. So we simply have our effects, and we create a variable called num and temp. Now the reason I have this little guide here is it's going to tell us the numbers that are required to know what it is. Because when we call our property of our effect, and we want to know if it's 3D spatial or 3D, it's not going to give us the text that says it's 3D or 2D. It's going to give us an enumerated number, which is actually variable depending on which version of After Effects you have. This 4-digit enumerated number can be found by grabbing any property of your effect, for example tritone highlights, and if I grab .property value type, it will return the number. So what I'm going to do is say right line effect.property I, and I'm going to say the name, and then on the second right line I'm going to duplicate it and say the property value type. So this is then in the JavaScript console going to essentially list out all of the properties it goes through and changes, as well as what value type they are. So when I run this, you can see I get the highlights. It gives me 6418. The midtones, those are also 6418. Blend with original is 6417. And if we refer to our guide, we can kind of rebuild this based on just a couple of property values, which is what I've done here. Essentially, you can see I've only included the last 2 digits of these enumerated numbers. Again, the reason for this is because in different versions of After Effects, the first 2 digits actually can change. So if you search exactly for 6417, it might be different in, say, CC 2015 or another version. So I've rebuilt this, and basically if it's 6412, it would be no value. If it's 6413, it would be a 3D spatial value, etc. down the line. And if we match it up here with 6417, it's a one-dimensional value, which is accurate. And if we look at our shadows, which ends in an 18, it should be a color, which is indeed that kind of value type. So then we set our num variable equal to this enumerated number it gives us. And based on that, we slice it so we just get those last 2 digits that are important. And then we set up a switch statement where we check what those are. And based on our guide, if it's 12, we don't need to do anything because we can't change the value. If it's 13, it's a 3D spatial value. So we're going to set our property to be random values with 3 dimensions inside of an array. And we're going to randomize it between the max value and 0. So some properties allow you to get the max value, and some properties don't have a max. And one thing I forgot to include in the script, which you may be able to go and expand on yourself, is sometimes you'll come across a case where a property does not have a max value, and the way you check for that is by using the max value method here, which will give you a floating point value of whether it's permitted. And if that's permitted, then you should get the max value. If it's not, then you should do a different case. So yeah, that's pretty much how this script works. It just goes through, identifies what kind of property it is, and then randomizes it based on that, making sure it has the proper number of dimensions. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below and the bell icon to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly. And of course, the code for this will be in the description down below in a GitHub link. And be sure to follow us on Instagram to be notified of updates before and after we are posting tutorials. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.